think about the reason that most new hires don't work out. And if you really look, the root cause is expectations weren't met on one side or the other. So imagine we spent a little bit of time during the offer and said, hey, Rich, let's talk about expectations for a minute. What do you expect of me? And here's what I expect of you. And let's get really clear on all of this stuff. I expect that you understand that we're short-staffed, hence why we're hiring you. Things are a little chaotic right now. So when you get into the mix, I don't want you to be overwhelmed or concerned about the chaos, and just be vulnerable with them during the interview process.
This is the Entrepreneurs United podcast with your hosts, John St. Pierre and Rich Hoffman.
Hey, entrepreneurs, we're here today with Ryan Englin, who's the CEO of Core Fit Hiring. And one of the things that I noticed on Ryan's LinkedIn profile is he has making the trades cool again. I'd love to jump right in and say, why did the trades not become cool? And how are you making them cool again?
I'm not doing it by myself. I got to tell you that. It is way too big an order. But I think that most people in the trades, most employers have lost sight of the changes that have happened in the world. And they have this old school mentality of, hey, it's the trades. We think it, we say it. It's okay to treat you like garbage. You're a set of hands. You should be honored that you get to have a job and work for me. Like, we have this mindset of, I'm better than you because I own the company or because I lead in the company. And that comes across. And there's a lot of people that have either they were in the trades or they had parents that were in the trades, and they're like, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. I don't want to be a part of that. And I think that a lot of the issue is that, you know, they've just lost sight of the knowledge work that has come out. And the knowledge work is much more desirable. It's much cooler to say I work for Google than it is to say I work for this big contractor. Yeah. And that's what we're competing against.
Ryan, let's get real for a minute. I certainly want to talk more about your book and exactly what you do to help businesses and entrepreneurs and leaders. But if we were to have this just real conversation about what is going on, what have we lost sight of as entrepreneurs, as leaders, of changes that have happened that maybe have happened just over time and we fell asleep as these changes are happening and we're not really aware that they're there? What would those be? I'm curious, Rich, to hear your opinion too. What are some of these changes that we just need to wake up and go, oh yeah, that's changed?
I would say a lot of this stuff has been there for a long time. Labor shortage, labor crisis, that's been there for a long time, decades even. The pandemic kind of pulled back the curtain and said, whoa, these are some of the issues that we've been dealing with, and now we get to see it. And I think that we all believe this. Everybody I talk to believes that people don't leave jobs, they leave people. Yet most entrepreneurs, most companies don't build their recruiting process, their hiring process around this truth. If we know that the person coming to apply for my job is leaving a boss, I need to show them how I'm a different kind of boss, the boss that they're looking for. But that's not what I do. I show them a job description with a bunch of bullet points of all the stuff I need them to do. And they're like, okay, you pay $1 more an hour, I'll take it. And they're just hoping that you're better than the company they're leaving, but they don't know. And so I think that's one of the big things that we all know is true, but we don't behave in that way. Like, we don't treat it that way.
So what, I guess I just want to challenge that for a second. We've always been told people leave bosses, they don't leave companies. So that's nothing really new from that perspective, but is how the leader needs to be today. What is that change that is brought to light now based on...
Well, I'll tell you, I know in my head that I have to eat right and exercise and I'll live a long, healthy life.
Yeah.
How many people do you know that actually do what they know to be true?
Yeah, not enough.
We know that people don't leave jobs, they leave managers, but none of us act that way. None of us behave in a way that says, yeah, I'm going to show you that working for me is better than working for someone else. Like, we know it in our heads, but we don't behave that way. Think about this. How many people, and we do a lot in the trades. So if we can solve the problem in the trades, we could probably solve it anywhere. It is so common for me to hear from an employer, hey, I didn't set up their accounts. I didn't run their I-9s, process their W-4s, set them up in payroll because I didn't know if they were going to show up on day one. So they have a process that says, hey, I don't trust you as a human to have integrity and show up for work on day one. And then what happens? The guy shows up And the boss is, oh, hey, we're glad you're here. We are not prepared for you. We have nothing set up. I know we said we were excited to have you join the team, but we're not going to behave in a way that shows you we were excited and prepare for you to be here. Just start off on the wrong foot. Or how many times do people show up for the first day of work? This could be even in corporate. When I was in my corporate days, this happened. You show up on your first day and they're like, who are you? Yeah, no one told me that today was anybody's first day. All we're doing is validating that this is going to be another employer that you're going to want to leave because you're looking for a better employer. So we know it to be true. We just don't act that way.
You had said we need to show them that we're a different kind of boss, or the individual needs to do that. And I heard you say something about the extra $1 an hour. It is true that a lot of entrepreneurs' experience is that those in the trades will leave for the extra $1 an hour. Sure. And with that being many people's experience, I'd love to hear you, like, how does that balance out in your experience? Will people in the trades actually stay because they like their direct supervisor, boss, employer, when they could be making more money potentially somewhere else?
We have countless examples and countless stories of people that have taken a pay cut to come work for one of our clients. And we've seen it happen time and time again. Looking for work is one of life's most stressful events. Looking for work is on that same list as death of a loved one, terminal health diagnosis, bankruptcy. It's on that same list. So most people, most sane people aren't going to say, hey, I want to be on that list. I'm going to go step into one of life's most stressful events on purpose. The reason that people say I'm leaving for $1 more an hour is because there's nothing the current employer is going to do or say to counter that. They're like, okay, I can't pay you more. Good luck. But the reason they were open to an opportunity that pays $1 more an hour is what we really need to get to. It's the root cause. Because if I'm happy, if I love my team, I love my boss, I'm excited to come to work on Monday morning and someone's, hey, $1 more an hour. I'm gonna be like, I'm not jumping out of this into the unknown, not for $1 more an hour, $5 more an hour, maybe. Now we're getting there. But nobody ever says, oh, they left me for $5 more an hour. No, they leave for 50 cents more an hour, $1 more an hour. So whatever the catalyst was that got them to be open to looking is the issue we have to solve. It's not the money. It's never the money.
I love everything you said, particularly the beginning, which was a mic drop moment in your pause of, hey, we have countless examples of plenty of people who have not left for $1 an hour in the companies who we work with. Big pause, like mic drop moment. I want to hear more about that. What are those people doing that the other people aren't?
If you put yourself into the job seeker's shoes for a second, and everything we do is focused on the job seeker, the employee first. In fact, we actually call it the employee first mindset. Go into their shoes for a minute. And most entrepreneurs forget what it was like to look for a job. It's been so long for them. Think about what they're looking for. They're looking to go to bed on a Sunday night and be like, I can't wait to get to work tomorrow. I can't wait to go spend the bulk of my waking hours tomorrow with people that I enjoy spending time with. That's what they want. But what do most people do on Sunday night? They go to bed. Maybe they have a drink to help them sleep, right? And their stomach's knots and they're like, oh, I got to go deal with this again tomorrow. That's what we've created for most employees. 70% of employees are not engaged and are open to a new opportunity. 70% in the United States. That means 7 out of 10 people that work for you would take $1 more an hour if the opportunity presented itself. Like, we're doing nothing to solve that problem, which is sitting down and saying, hey, what would it take for you to be engaged? Having a conversation with someone and saying, how can I be that employer that you don't want to leave? What do I need to do? Who do I need to become to do that? We don't have those conversations. And when we do have those conversations and we do talk to our people, they're like, wow, my boss actually cares about me. For the first time in my career, I feel like my boss actually cares about me as a human being, which is not very common. And the pandemic showed that, right? We divided people into essential and non-essential workers. Like, what a horrible way to talk about your people.
Wow.
And then what we did is we told the non-essential workers, hey, I still need to be able to pay my bills. I don't care if you can pay your bills. Right? We're going to lay you off. We're going to cut your hours. We're going to do all these things. And we did this to half the population. And what happened is the job seekers woke up and say, wait a minute, they don't really care about me. They say they care about me, but they don't really care about me at the end of the day. And that's why you had people completely switch careers or go into the gig economy, because I can go drive for Uber and yeah, I'll work more hours, but I'm in control. And that's what we showed them during the pandemic. And now here we are figuring out, well, why are so many people left the industry? It's not like there's that many less people in the world working, right? But they've all left certain industries, and that's why some of them are struggling so much.
If I were to observe an employer who has an employee first mindset, what would be the top 3 to 5 things that I would be observing?
So the first thing you would see is that they're focused more on the individual's personal growth than they are on the individual's professional growth. Most people don't wake up in the morning and say, I can't wait for my boss to send me to that project management or that software class today because I'm going to be more effective for him. That's not what they're thinking. But when you see a company that brings in Dave Ramsey's program and says, hey, I want to give you an opportunity to learn how to budget your money, how to control your finances, how to get the things you want out of life personally, you're going to see that and you're going to go, whoa, the types of development that these employers are pushing their people into is all about their personal growth. You're going to see that employee first mindset because that's what people want. I come to work every day because I want to support my family, because I want to create experiences in my life, not because I want to say I grounded out for 40 years and nobody appreciated me. So we're going to see them focus on personal growth more than professional growth. We're also going to see 360 communication. We're not just going to see top down, we're going to see bottom up. And we're going to see leaders actually listening and engaging in dialogue with their people, saying, how can we make things better? And too often we just see top down communication. In fact, most communication tools are designed for top down communication. I've seen this happens usually in larger companies. They talk about their open door policy. They let their team, hey, my door is always open. And then every time the team looks up, the door's closed. We say it, but we don't do it. And that's another thing. You would see high integrity. So they do what they say they're going to do. We've seen, even in small companies, we've seen people leave because the boss didn't say thank you enough. I have seen people leave because they're 18 months into waiting for their first quarterly review. They're not getting the feedback from their boss that their boss told them they would get. They didn't get enrolled in that training program that the boss said they would get enrolled them in. We're so busy as entrepreneurs, it's really easy to forget some of the things we said we'd do. And you'd see in companies that really are focused on the employee first, you would see high levels of integrity. When they said they were going to do something, they actually follow through and do it.
I actually captured 5 things there from you. One is focused more on individuals' personal growth than professional growth. 360 communication, including bottom up. Do what they say they will do. Then, as you elaborated, you included appreciation, that employee first companies are going to say thank you for work well done, and feedback, that people will feel measured in some level and know what are some areas to continue, areas to improve, that they'll receive that feedback. I want to dig in on the 360 communication. If I'm an entrepreneur listening and I go, now that I reflect on it, I don't ask a lot of questions of my frontline workers. The majority of the communication is me doing the telling. How would someone go about getting that started? Because I imagine that's going to be awfully awkward the first time that happens. How does somebody get that ball started rolling for the first time?
Yeah. I would say before you go in and you start that ball rolling, you need to have a commitment to doing this long term. What we see happen is someone will say, hey, I'm just going to do a survey because that's easier, right? It's less conflict if people don't want to do the survey. So they send out a survey and then the people are skeptical because they're like, why are they asking me all of a sudden? They get the information back and they go, well, this isn't really useful. There's nothing here that's new to me. And then leadership goes, we did our survey this year, we're good. And we don't continue it. So if you're going to start it, you got to make sure that you have a plan in place to continue it, even if the feedback's not good in the beginning, because your people are going to be skeptical. They will be skeptical. You've never asked this stuff before. So they're going to give you the softball answers, the things that aren't going to get them in trouble. And then when they see you're hearing them and you're responding to them, they're like, oh, maybe they really do care. Maybe they are interested. And then you ask again and again, and over 6, 9, 12 months, all of a sudden you start getting the really good stuff. So that's one thing, is you got to have a long-term commitment to it. But then I would say the way to do it the first time is just to pick one question and ask it. We talk about employee engagement because most companies don't have a hiring problem as much as they have a retention problem. So how do we engage our people? And they're like, I don't know what my people want. How do I find out what my people want? And literally, if people ask me this, how do I find out what people want? Ask them. Take them to lunch. Bring donuts and coffee in one morning and just say, hey, let's all huddle up. I want to ask you all a question. Just ask them. And don't feel bad when they don't give you good answers, or they're skeptical, or they're hesitant, or they're reserved. Just say, hey, I truly want to know. I'm turning over a new leaf. This is important to me. How can I be a better leader for you? And just ask. But have that long-term mindset. That's key.
You'd said within there, pick a single question and ask that question. Can you give a couple examples of what a question might be?
Yeah, I like to say, hey, if you had a magic wand and can change one thing around here, what would it be? You might not want to hear the answer, so be sure you're prepared for that. That's a good one. Another one is, hey, where do you see your career in the next 3 years? Is your personal career going in the same direction as our company? That's why you ask that question. Where's your career going in the next 3 years? And be okay with somebody saying, I'm probably not working here. Great. How long do you think you're going to work here? Maybe the next 6, 12 months. How can we make this the best 6 to 12 months for you? And then 12 months shows up, they may not leave.
Yeah, exactly. Right, Ryan, you said something earlier in this conversation, and if I'm an entrepreneur listening to this, I may do the exact same thing you said earlier in the conversation. I know I should eat well and go to the gym, and this all sounds good. I may have heard before I need to be a better leader and ask questions, but then life gets in the way. And then this new customer needs this project done. And then this happens. And then I forget to ask the question. And so what's the accountability measure for entrepreneurs? Because you said something, we all know we should do it, but then we just don't do it. Yeah. So how can we get an entrepreneur listening to this who's going, you know what? Yeah, I probably don't do enough of this. And then they go do something else this afternoon. They forget about this conversation. What can an entrepreneur do to start cementing some of this in their business today and be accountable to doing it?
The easiest thing is to tell your team you want this and you need their help. It's okay to be vulnerable for a minute in front of your team because they know you can't do it all. It's one of those things, like my wife will tell me, the kids don't know. I'm like, the kids probably know a lot more than we think, right? And we see that all the time. Your people know. Your people look at you and say, you know what? I know they want to be a better leader, but I don't really see them acting that way. I don't see them behaving that way. And they're not going to come up and say, hey, I think I can make you a better leader. Because, John, they're not going to know how you're going to respond to that.
Yeah.
So they're not going to just volunteer it. But if you came up to me and you said, hey, John, I want to let you know, listen to this podcast today, blew my mind, really got me thinking, I need to do the things that I know I need to do.
Yeah.
Right? It can't just be something I know anymore. It's something that has to be in action. And I could use your help with that. Would you mind holding me accountable to some of those things? That's that bottom down or bottom up communication we talked about, right? Yeah. Would you mind holding me accountable? Here's the first thing I want to do. I want to get to know you better. Can you hold me accountable just getting to know you better? Just little things. Like we don't have to have this big, long weekend getaway. It can just be little things. Yeah. Share with me what you did over the weekend and help me with that. And I want to get better at that. And that's something I could use your help with.
It strikes me, the Jerry Maguire, help me help you. Like, help me help you. And then the other piece that I think is, there's a couple other pieces that just come to mind as you're saying all of that. Rich, we had Ted Ma with us. And the one thing that stuck with me in his conversation was you got to move from being a manager to a leader. And you got to move from being a leader to a mentor. And a mentor cares more about you, the individual, and what you were trying to achieve in your life then they do care about, did you hit your KPIs for the week, which would be the manager, right, on the other side. So how do you move to that mentor mindset? And then as you're saying this, one thing that I've done before, and again, I'd love to hear from you guys different ideas, this idea of never go to lunch alone, right? This idea of, even if it's 20 minutes, find somebody every day on your team that you can go to lunch with. And to your point, just ask these questions. How are you doing? I'd love to help mentor you in different areas of your life and help you succeed in different areas. How are things going? How's the family? What's going on? What are you thinking? And if you become that mentor, to your point, they're not going to leave for an extra dollar. You're helping them with all these different areas of their life, right? So the first idea comes from, you have to eat. Okay, never go to lunch alone. I don't care if that's a walk to the smoothie shop or whatever you do, and make it a practice of trying to go through everybody in your organization and say, help me help you. I want to help you, right? That's one way to do it. The other way you said is bring the whole team together and say, hey, I want to be vulnerable here. I want to start doing this. Are there any other tricks that you guys have experienced that would be a good way to practice going, that you're held accountable to in a way?
I mean, short of bringing your team on, I think where I see most entrepreneurs fail at this is that they start it and they realize that getting started is hard.
Yep.
Their team is not responsive. Like, they go into it going, I'm going to tell my team I'm going to be vulnerable. And I'm like thinking they're going to put their arm around me, like, we're going to do this together. Rah. And then the team's just sitting there going, okay, this is weird. This is awkward. I don't know what to do. And we're like, so does anybody have any questions on what we want to do? Crickets.
Yep.
And then we walk away in shame going, I don't know if being vulnerable is the right idea. And it's not because it's the wrong idea. It's because your people aren't used to this. It's different for them. It's like anything that's a habit. It takes time. And if your people have worked for you for years and they've seen you act a certain way, and then all of a sudden one day you're different, they're going to question, like, what's the motive here?
Yep.
And the same thing when you say becoming a mentor, we have a lot of companies that we work with where the entrepreneur wants to be that mentor, but they're too caught in the weeds. So before you even worry about moving from manager to leader to mentor, you have to figure out how to get out of the business.
Yep.
Because as long as you're in the business and dealing with that customer that needs that job done, or dealing with that customer that's not happy, or dealing with the fact that you're short-staffed, that's all in the business stuff. You have to figure out how to get out of it and build a team of people you can trust so that you can go work on yourself to become that better mentor.
Yeah, Stephen Covey Jr., right? The speed of trust. And if you have this culture when people join your organization, back to where you started, and you treat them right from the day they show up and being ready for them to join the business, and you start right away trying to understand what their goals and objectives are, they trust you right off the bat. If you don't treat them like that, and 3 years in, you're like, okay, guys, today I want to be vulnerable. I really want to know what your life goals are, right? They're going to be like, what is going on here? I don't trust this guy, right? What is happening? You got to try and create that culture. And what I've seen a lot, to your point, is they hear a podcast like this, they go and try and implement something Monday morning, and then by the next week, it's game over, right? They don't have enough time for it anymore. It's not a priority anymore, and they fall back to the old ways of doing things. And so that accountability piece is really important. And the magic that I think I've experienced is having your team hold you accountable to it, and like open that door genuinely for them to hold you accountable to helping them and achieving those objectives.
And if you're comfortable doing that and you've got a team that support you, we shifted the way we support our clients, and we created these weekly accountability peer groups.
Yeah.
And so every week they're in an accountability group, and it's not their team anymore. It's peers now who are dealing with the same thing, talking about the same issues, needing the same support. And so now we've got peers that are supporting each other too. So if you aren't comfortable doing it with your team, go find a peer group that can do it for you and hold you accountable. You can come to them and you can be incredibly vulnerable because they understand what it's like to be where you're at. If you've got a frontline worker, they may not understand the complexities or all of the issues that come with being an entrepreneur, being an owner. They just don't know. They've never been exposed to that. So it might be a little different, but you can walk into a peer group with other entrepreneurs, especially in the same industry or at the same level of business as you. And you can say something like, I get it. Like, you don't have to explain anything. Right?
Ryan, what do you say to the entrepreneur who says, hey, Ryan, this sounds nicey nice and all. Care about the people more than the business. And look, we're behind this year. I'm really struggling. I'm afraid if we don't get some cash flow going, I may not be able to make payroll. And can we just talk about my people going out and selling something, for goodness sakes? Like, I get it. We can have a meeting and talk about your personal life when we're doing well. We're not there right now. Is this the time, Ryan, you want me to sit down and talk to them about their personal life when I've got some serious concerns about what's going on here?
My response to that would be, we've all heard entrepreneurs say, you know what? I just wish my people would care about the business as much as I do, which is what you're saying, right? How do we get them to care about the fact that revenue's down, that cash flow's down, that we just need sales? How do we get them to care? And my response would be, your people would care about the business more if you showed them that you cared about them as much as you care about the business.
And when's a good time to start that? Is it like anytime, as soon as you're ready? Or is
it's like planting a tree, right? The best time to do it was when you start a business. To John's point about the speed of trust, when you first hired them is when you should have started this, but you can't. So the next best time's now.
Yeah, I would even argue it's in the interview process, right? Because they start identifying what your priorities are then.
We teach the interview process pretty extensively because I think it's the biggest opportunity for entrepreneurs to solve this problem with people leaving and people not being engaged. And the interview process.
I'd love to transition right there. Tell us the core fit hiring process that you have. What are some elements of that? How does it work?
Let's talk about the interview process for a second, because I think this is where the greatest opportunity is.
Yeah.
Think of the interview process like your sales process, except you're the one buying and you need to guide them through how to sell you. The employee should be selling you. The job seeker should be selling you. You need to guide them through it. But one of the first things we do when we go meet a new customer, or at least teach our people, is do a little rapport building. Get them to trust you, get them to like you, get them to know a little bit about you. Let's do that in the interview. Let's just spend some time getting to know people. And then let's talk about their pain. Why is it that they're looking for another opportunity? What are they looking for in a new employer? Let's talk about that for a minute. Because if they say something to me and I'm like, "Whoa, that ain't us," you just don't hire them, because it's not going to end well. What are they looking for? What do they want to accomplish with their career? What are their goals in life? And we learn that stuff. And then we see, do they fit our culture? Can we be the leader, the mentor they need us to be? Because if not, it's over. But what happens is we focus so much on, can they do the work? We forget to look at, can they be a part of our team? Most of this stuff we can teach that we need people to do. And we're going to teach them to do it our way anyway. So what we really need to do is focus on, do they feel like they fit here? Do we feel like they fit here? And then finally, in the interview process, we teach a process during the offer meeting that everybody screws up. Like, they just don't even think about it until I say it and they're like, duh. Think about the reason that most new hires don't work out. And if you really look, the root cause is expectations weren't met on one side or the other, right? Rich, you said you could do this work and it doesn't look like you can do the work. Or you said you would communicate with me if you saw problems and I don't see you communicating with me. You said you could take care of the customer. I don't see you taking care of the customer. Or on the other side, I told you, Rich, yeah, we're going to have this open feedback, these 360 communication. Like, you're going to communicate with your peers, you're going to communicate with your boss, you can communicate with anybody, but then it's not happening. So our expectations weren't met. So imagine we spent a little bit of time during the offer and said, hey, Rich, let's talk about expectations for a minute. What do you expect of me? And here's what I expect of you. And let's get really clear on all of this stuff. Right? I expect that if you show up on the first day of work and we don't show you where the restroom is, that you're not embarrassed to say, hey, can someone tell me where the restroom is? I expect that you understand that we're short-staffed, hence why we're hiring you. Things are a little chaotic right now. So when you get into the mix, I don't want you to be overwhelmed or concerned about the chaos, and just be vulnerable with them during the interview process. I use this as an analogy to that. When I moved in with my wife, I learned a lot of things that were just dumb things we fought about. Which way does the toilet paper go? Wouldn't it be so cool if we sat in the driveway and said, okay, before we go in there and there's any fight, which way does the toilet paper go? Over or under? Got it. You like it over? Perfect. I don't care.
By the way, it does go over, Ryan. It goes over.
Okay. All right. Until you have a toddler And the toddler figures out they can go and unwind the whole thing like that, right?
Dang,
So
it isn't as simple as I thought.
she comes into the bathroom one time. She's like, Ryan, I need your help. And I'm like, what? And there's a whole roll of toilet paper that had been unwound and stuffed in the toilet, because that's what you do. You flush toilet paper. But did you know this? There is a certain way to fold a bath towel. I didn't know this. I found this out when I folded them wrong. Imagine we sat in the driveway and we said, okay, how do you fold the towel? All right, is the clothes hamper a target, or is that actually where the clothes go? Got it. Okay, and shoes, where do the shoes go? How do you squeeze a tube of toothpaste? So think about all these dumb things that you learned about each other really early on. And for some couples, those are the things that destroy the marriage. We have those things when we hire people. These stupid little things that aren't deal breakers, but you pile enough of them up and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad they're gone. So imagine we sat down and we figured out what those things were in our company. What are those things that are going to annoy you? Hey, we're short-staffed and I still work in the business. I might not be as available as you want me to be. Let's talk about that for a minute. Think about all of those things where we create these false expectations or opportunities for unrealized expectations. Let's have that conversation up front. Much easier to talk about it when they happen.
Of all the things available in the world that someone could do for a living and be passionate about, you picked this. What's your story?
I grew up in a blue-collar family. My dad was an owner-operator, thinking if I own my own business, I'll make more money. I'll have more time off. I'll have more opportunities to do things with the family. And a couple years in, he's working 12-hour days, 6-7 days a week, and the business owns him. And as I got older, I realized that it wasn't because my dad didn't know how to run a business. It was because my dad didn't know how to surround himself with people he trusts to do the work. His entire 40-year career, same exact thing, was not able to find people or did not know how to create a team of people. So when I told my dad I'm not going to the family business because I don't want the chaos that he has, I went to college, I went the corporate route, and I learned about the importance of process and connecting with people, which corporate doesn't do very well either. So when I left that, I started my own marketing company, believing that the reason my dad wasn't successful was because he didn't have enough revenue. Like we've heard this, that cash is king, right? Cash solves all problems. So I thought, I'm going to start a marketing company to help people like my dad not only find new customers, but really keep and engage old ones. And so I did that for a few years. And then all of my clients were contractors. And I had a whole slew of them. It's like I almost got together and talked and said, hey, this whole lead gen thing's not working for us because we got empty trucks. So they all canceled the marketing services. And I remember going to one, it was an HVAC contractor in Phoenix in July. I don't know if you've ever been to Phoenix in July. It is hot. They were booking 3 weeks out to fix someone's air conditioning. They're like, I'm not paying for these leads. They had 4 empty trucks. And they said, you know what? Recruiting is nothing more than a marketing activity. And I know marketing. Let me see if I can find you some texts. 3 weeks later, they call me and they say, turn the leads back on. We filled all 4 trucks and we got 2 more on order. That's how many texts we found. And I was like, well, that's cool. When they're struggling with people, I'll help them find people. When they're struggling with leads, I'll help them find leads. And found out that was just too much. So I said, hey, let's just focus on the people side of thing. No one is solving this problem. There's Band-Aid solutions, right? A recruiter, staffing agency, those kinds of things, but no one's actually solving the problem. So over the next 4 years, I developed the CoreFit hiring system, which is detailed in my book. And it's the 7 components that really impact your ability to attract, hire, and retain great people you trust. And so I started coaching on that in 2018, consulting on it. And then I went to a completely virtual model. Like it was serendipitous. God had his plan for me. In 2019, I launched a virtual program to teach this to companies all over the country. And in 2020, when no one wanted me to travel or visit them anymore, it worked out great. So I've been doing this for the last 5 years. My book just came out in October that details this whole plan and how they can implement this process inside of their business.
Rich and I have a hard time when somebody says, I have 7 core components to something. Then I'd say, well, okay, hold on a second. 1, would you be able to just, don't even have to talk about them. Just can you bullet list what those are that we would cover more in reading the book?
Yeah. So the most important thing is core. Company's name is Core Matters. It's the Core Fit hiring system, Core. A lot of people call that culture. I find it goes deeper than just culture. That's your core.
Okay.
When you have that, it solves a lot of problems. Then find, where are you fishing for employees? I'm not looking for specific people, but where are you going to fish? Lake Indeed is overfished. It's not the best place to get people. And then automate. And this is a core component for us because most entrepreneurs don't have more time. So how do we automate the recruiting, interviewing process? Then we get into interviewing, then onboarding, a critical component. If we don't onboard, it's all for nothing. Then how do we engage people long-term? And finally, how do we assess our system? Not assess the employees, but are we getting enough applicants? Are they high enough quality? Are our interviews converting at the right amount? Are we onboarding people that actually stay? That's what we're looking for and assess. So those are the 7 components. There is a chapter dedicated to each one in the book, as well as a bunch of tips, tricks, stories, some of the stuff I've shared here.
Awesome. And the book is called Hire Better People Faster. I'm assuming it can be found on Amazon and
everywhere.
other spots.
But I have an offer for your listeners if they'd like.
Please.
If you go to corematters.com/free book, I ask you to help me with a little bit of shipping and handling fees, but I will mail you an autographed copy of the book for you and your team to read.
Awesome.
Now, if you want the audio version, if you're that kind of person, I've got a lot of windshield time, it is available on all the audio platforms.
I'd love to hear a promo real quick before we hop off about this Blue Collar Culture podcast. So for those that have blue collar workers in their business, I'd love to hear just your 60-second promo for why they should move to have some of your podcasts in their ear.
Yeah. So I actually rebranded just recently the podcast to Titans of the Trades.
Okay.
Still focused on blue collar, still all that. But what we're doing now is we are sharing stories of leaders in the industry who have made it happen. They've climbed to the mountaintop. They've used successful strategies to build a team of people they can trust and grow their business. And so it's easy for a bunch of subject matter experts to come in and go, here's theoretically what you should do. And I found that a lot of our listeners, they want to hear the stories, the struggles, the trials, the challenges, the wins that these people have had that are actually in it with them. So we bring in leaders from companies all over the country, all sorts of different walks of life, all got started differently. And we share their stories to give the rest of the industry hope to know it's possible and they can make it happen.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Stay tuned as John and Rich unpack today's conversation.
Rich, the one concept that I kept thinking about through this conversation with Ryan was this idea of servant leadership. And we've talked about it a little bit, which is reversing the org chart a little bit and not even the language we use, right? Like he gave a really good example. Essential workers, non-essential workers. Like what kind of message are you sending? There's also they're under me, or it's a top down, that whole idea. And if you flip the org chart around and think about it as the CEO and entrepreneur or leader of your business, you work for everybody else. Your job is to clear the pathway to help create strategy so everybody can realize their goals and dreams, not only in the business, but in their lives. And if you reverse that mentality, and I'm a servant leader to the business and the people within it, your mentality changes. That was a big shift for me when I learned that whole concept and idea, that I really would go to my team and I'd be like, how can I help you? How can I help you achieve your goals, whatever you're trying to achieve? And just change the whole conversation anytime I would meet with them. So I really encourage people to think a little bit more about that. Reverse your org chart and look at it the other way around. You work for your people, not the other way around.
Well, as you know, I'm a bit of a stickler on language just with how I grew up with 2 educators in my home as a child and a bit of a wordsmith. And I tend to correct people who I work with who say that they work for me.
Yep.
I literally interrupt them mid-sentence like my parents did with me as a kid when I didn't say I or me correctly. And I'll be like, you work for yourself. You don't work for me. We work together. But just to be clear, you work for yourself. Yeah, that's what comes to mind when you say what you just did. Among the many truth bombs that Ryan dropped, one of them that I think, among others, is absolutely indisputable is when employment doesn't work out, it is a result of mixed expectations.
Yes.
Either expectations by the employee or expectations of the employer. but somebody didn't have the correct expectations, which is why they're leaving. Because if all the expectations were met, why would they leave? And I think that's so important in the obviously interviewing, the selection, the onboarding process. And that is indisputable. And I think the average person would say, yeah, oh, wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The other thing, though, is in Ryan's engagement that he has in his 7 components. He goes from onboarding to just ongoing engagement of people. The continued expectation setting with that employee. So it's not only about the interviewing, onboarding, initial expectation setting process, but as you have a long-term relationship with employees, what I have found is there needs to be continuous reshifting of expectations, because you expect different things for the person as you now understand them better, see them better, care for them differently, shifting what their career is going to look to. That expectation setting doesn't stop both ways.
Yeah, he paralleled the interview process to a sales process. And as you were saying what you just said about expectations, one of the things that you don't do when you're in a sales pitch, and he talked about the things you do. You build rapport. In a sales pitch, you would build rapport, build that relationship, but yet in interviews, sometimes we don't do that. Okay, got that. Secondly, you find out what they're looking for. In a sales process, you find out what your client is looking for so you can fit the need. But in the interview process, you may not go into it. You may just go straight to what you need, right? Is that the person that fits you? In the sales process, do they fit, right? And the same thing, you maybe will do that in the interview. Do they fit? But then there's this whole idea of expectations. And one thing I learned, Rich, back to our college pro interviewing days that I still do to this day, and I think it's one of the best things I do in my interviewing process, is I can sell the dream like no other. So can you. This is the dream. You're going to come work here. Things are going to be fantastic. You're going to love everybody, blah, blah, blah. And then I say, are you okay if I sell you the nightmare? And I literally say those words. I just sold you the dream of how great this is going to be and how long our company's been in business and how big we are and how we're going to be successful. And can I sell you the nightmare? And they go, yeah, please. And I do exactly what Ryan just talked about. You know what? We've got an influx of business and we're short staffed right now. So people are putting in long hours. And you know what? You may not like the person sitting next to you in the office because you haven't met them yet. I don't know if you're going to like them or not. And you know what? Sometimes there's a lineup at the bathroom and it sucks. And sometimes our computers are a little slow because the internet in here is not so great. And sometimes I'm running so hard, I have a hard time seeing what's going on over here. And it's hard working here. Sometimes clients call you and they get pissed off at you. And I sell them a nightmare and I go, are you up for that challenge? Does anything in there intimidate you or you don't want to come work here? And they go, no, I love it. I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. And in my head, okay, they understand some of the good and some of the not so good of our business right off the bat. And they almost get juiced up. They almost start selling you on why that's okay and why they are willing to accept those challenges and everything else. And then you have the right person. So just that idea of being vulnerable, you wouldn't do that in the sales process, though. You wouldn't in the sales process go, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, let me tell you the nightmare of our product and service. You would never do that. But in the interview process, it's so important.
I'm not so sure about that, John. I actually think like when we are talking with our salespeople about going out and they sell paint jobs, residential and commercial, I would actually recommend that they do some of that and to say to the customer, hey, I want you to know that this is an imperfect process. We're putting a liquid on a vertical surface. Sometimes things happen. We use drop claws. We take all the careful precautions, but I want you to know something's going to happen we didn't expect and you didn't either on the job site. If you happen to see anything, please just let us know. We take care of problems very fast. Maybe we already saw it, maybe we didn't, but if you happen to see anything that you don't like or don't appreciate, just let us know. We're very good at cleaning up our own messes.
I love that. You're absolutely right. I want to take back what I just said. Setting expectations like that with customers in the sales process is awesome because when something does go wrong, which inevitably it does, you can remind them of that conversation. Remember I told you that it's not always going to be perfect? That's why you called me. I'm going to take care of it.
Yeah. I liked a piece of the process that Ryan laid out that if you've never done this bottom up thing and really gotten into the opinion of frontline workers, I liked the process that I captured in my notes. Be vulnerable. Let them know, hey, I've never done this before. It's been a miss. I'm going to start doing something a little differently and asking you more questions about just where you're at and what we could do better as an organization. Now, then asking just one question to start with. Love that piece of the process. Knowing that the person is going to be skeptical. It's the first time it's ever happened. And they're going to be skeptical and probably not ask you, so what's your motive in this? So what's really going on? They're probably not going to ask you that, but they're going to fill those gaps in themselves. And they're still probably going to leave that conversation being skeptical. The way you overcome them being skeptical, to be persistent, to keep coming at it. And eventually they'll see this really matters to you and you're not going to give it up. And when you said you were going to turn over a new leaf, you actually did. And you followed through on that. And now they can count on it. And there's nothing to be skeptical about.
Yeah, Rich, you just brought up another idea that I've executed on and I didn't really think about in this conversation. When I was asking Ryan about how can entrepreneurs and leaders be accountable to this? And the idea is, well, be persistent, keep showing up and doing it. And that's all fine and dandy, but still life gets in the way and things happen and you get off track. And the one thing that I did over the past, I won't say decade, but close to decade, is I had one or sometimes multiple people on my inner circle team, Erica being one of them that still works with me today, that was always ears to the ground and being able to level with me going, hey, I think it's time for us to buy lunch for the team and have a conversation, right? Or, hey, you said you're going to do this, but you didn't do that, what you said you were going to do, and people are talking about it at the water cooler, whatever it may be, managing that core that Ryan talked about and having their ears on it. And that's something you can do with your inner circle, your leadership team, to be like, hey, we're going to have a conversation with the team. And here's the way that I want to be. You guys help me, right? You guys are on my leadership team. Be honest with me and make sure you come back to me and give me some feedback, right? I'm ready and willing, and they will help you. Have your team, the real close circle, help you and keep their ear to what is going on in the business. So anyway, great conversation with Ryan. A lot more to come of this kind of content here on the Entrepreneurs United podcast. Please leave a review on the podcast if you're still listening to us here, and go check out Ryan's book at corematters.com/freebook.